Hello, and welcome to Illuminating Man, an intentional space created to explore the concepts of community, spirituality, and self work from the perspective of men on the path of illumination. I'm Rye King. I'm sitting here with Ryan Albury today. Hello, Ryan. People in the podcast can't see you gesture.
Oh yeah, those are my little tourist peace signs saying hello. Whoops. Sorry, all y'all out there.
Um, so what did you want to get into today, Ryan?
I think that we should follow up with what we started with last week, which was exploring what it means to be a man and what it means as a collective and as an individual, and then from there, what what does this term or concept of men's work mean, I guess. So I think that what makes most sense to me is to go into um, what do we work on? Like what does that on a deeper level? What does men's work or self improvement? Can you hear that dog barking in the background?
Yeah, I can very clearly hear the dog barking.
I think he has a problem with something. Gotta love Costa Rica. So yeah, essentially it would just be like looking at what we would work on in men's work or in circle work. Just go from there.
Cool.
So you mentioned to me that in some of our previous conversations that you had, and in our last podcast, that you had some experience doing men's work. What was your experience like? What did you work on?
Yeah, so as we've discussed privately a bit, my experience with men's work is pretty limited in general. Men's work and men's groups. I was a part of one group for probably a few months, 2 or 3 months, that I went semi-regularly, and we worked with the archetypes from the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Is that the name? That's the name of the book, right? I always get the
Yeah,
order messed up. King, Warrior,
yeah,
Magician, Lover.
yeah. Douglas, Robert Moore, and Douglas Gillette are the authors.
Mm-hmm. So then we would use different exercises and practices within that circle to explore those archetypes and integrate them into our lives and into ourselves.
So my hope was to not talk about the word archetypes in our second episode, but here we are. What's your understanding of what those are and how they influence?
And how
And
they
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm just hoping to give a brief sort of like primer on that for anybody who's listening, so they're not wondering for the rest of the podcast what an archetype is.
Right. There's that dog again.
I'm gonna mute this thing when you're talking because this dog I think has a ADD.
I have a feeling you're gonna forget to unmute it the next time you talk. um Archetypes. Yeah, so King, Warrior, Magician, Lover is a book. uh Robert Moore and Doug Gillette, I believe, are the authors.
Yeah, that's right.
And um they posit that these four energetic expressions are the basis, I guess, of balanced masculinity, as we somewhat defined in our last episode. Does that make sense? Would you agree with what I'm saying so far?
Yeah, I would. I like how you said that.
And so I don't have the exact definition of an archetype to give out. How would you define an archetype, Brian?
Well, I mean, it's always been a bit of a struggle with people just entering into the world of archetypal theory, I guess you could call it, to actually explain what that is. But I saw it done a cool way with a coach I was working with a while back, Doron Geber. Sorry, Doron, if you ever see this and I pronounce your name wrong. He's a South African fellow, now living in Israel, I believe. And I was working with him for a while, and he said when he was describing it to people that hadn't had any experience with it, he said, okay, now everybody in the room sit like a king or a queen, and everybody immediately sat up all regal and noble and whatever wording you would want to use to describe that posture, but everybody knew the energetic was sort of like that, right? And then he's like, okay, now everybody sit like a villain. And people all kind of went like, they crouched over, they made some face or whatever, right? And so that's the best way that I've ever seen those explained rapidly. It's just like these energetics that we have access to, and sometimes they show up in our lives, and run our life, or sometimes they show up in our lives, momentarily, subtly, and influence the situation. Like if something needs to be done, the warrior energy comes online, and we just put on our big boy socks or big girl socks, whatever, big person socks, and just go to it without thinking about, I don't really want to do this. It's like, no, that needs to happen right now. And so that's kind of the simplest way. I mean, Archetypes is ARCHTYPES. So anybody listening can just head on out and do their own research. I mean, there's a lot on those. And, but yeah, I just wanted to give that little bit there, just so that anybody listening wasn't thinking about that word. Cause I know I thought about that word for months. I was like, what the hell are these people talking about? They're got to be on something. King, warrior, magician, lover. It just sounded like some bunch of nerds playing Dungeons and Dragons or something. That was a dart, by the way.
Yeah.
They're like too affected by it or too pleased by it. One of the two.
What's that?
I said you don't look too affected or pleased by my dart. One of the two.
I've never heard that term "dart" in that sense.
A dart. It's like throwing a jab.
Never heard anybody say
that. I'm calling you a nerd because last time we were talking, you're like, "Oh, I was that when I used to play Dungeons and Dragons." I was like,
you can't offend me by calling me a nerd. That's just like, it's like,
what can I call you to offend you then?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll talk about that another time.
I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's something, but my mind doesn't want to like immediately bring it up, because then
biologically male human. Just strip your malehood and masculine energy right away from you.
No, that's
as biologically male.
That's as accurate as calling me a nerd. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll work on that for future episodes. Anyway, so
figuring out how to offend me.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're gonna get bored eventually. We're gonna have to have a fight on screen and work to show people how to do some work, and it's gonna get spicy
for sure.
Anyway, so archetypes are, to me, at first I was like, they were confusing, and then they were a write-off because while they were confusing, they were a write-off because I didn't understand, and then when I got it, and I actually work with them in my one-on-one sessions with people now. I don't call it archetypes. I call it something simpler. I call it parts, or like parts of someone's self or parts of consciousness, depending on the person. But I've found that it is a very, very powerful tool to use as a map of where I'm at in any one moment, and which of those archetypes or parts of me are in shadow, or are like, acting from a wounded place or a limiting belief. So now that we're here, I'm glad that you actually brought up the archetypes. They are a big part of men's work. But yeah, how did those impact your life? You said you were there 2 or 3 months. What was your experience like in that 2 or 3 months? Because I don't even know. Like, really, I'm actually curious. This is not a put on for the show.
I don't know. I mean, that was a while back. That was like,
How long?
maybe 7 years ago now.
Oh, okay.
So it's tough to remember everything that was going on for me at the time, and I don't even I read that book as well, and I don't quite recall everything about it. So I'm probably due for another read through of that book as well.
Yeah, remind me later. I think I have the audiobook files on my computer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, an audio book would be nice. I've got a Kindle lately too, so I've been reading on that. It's nice.
Nice.
But so I can't really name any like specific experiences or changes that happened for me at the time, but I do think that it was transformative for me just to have that space with other men to explore these ideas on a regular basis.
And by these ideas, you mean the archetypes, or more beyond that?
Beyond that, I guess, well, yeah, but that in particular, I mean, that's what we were working on specifically, but there was, of course, everything around it, like the king. If you're studying the king archetype, that can be anything from like planning projects, focus and overseeing things in your life. And so there's so many different avenues of exploration within each archetype.
And what about that weekend you were telling me about that you went and did?
Yeah, so
that's of course, as we said last episode, like all of the sort of bullet points under men's work could also be done by females or women or people identifying as female or as gender neutral. I don't know all the terms, but yeah, I mean, all those things could be done. But was that a men's weekend?
The weekend? No, the whole
or like
weekend,
the workshop.
The workshop, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was just a men's circle amongst other many other workshops that were happening that weekend as well. So,
and you said it was called Primal Skills?
Yeah. So for those of you listening, I was at a primitive skills gathering. Again, this is probably around the same time, 6 or 7 years ago. And that was one of my first experiences with a men's group, or a men's circle.
Were there women at the primitive skills gathering?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it was all genders, and then there was a men's circle.
Yeah, there was also a women's circle at the same time.
Oh, sweet. That's cool.
Yeah.
Were men allowed at the women's circle?
Were men allowed at the women's circle?
Yeah.
No.
Oh. Uh-oh. No, don't listen to me. I'm just being a shit.
But women weren't allowed at the men's circle, so why would men be allowed at the women's circle?
I was just referring to the some of the undertones of the other conversations we've had in the last episode and privately around what does it mean to be a man, and how, if I'm identifying as a woman, am I allowed to go to a women's circle when I'm clearly.
Well, I mean, it
I'm just being a
actually
shit, like I said.
was it actually was left open that anybody who anybody who identifies as a woman could be at the women's circle.
Right.
That was said. I don't know if anybody specifically said that about the men's circle, but
Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation when we go back to that one of like. But yeah, I mean, all jokes aside, essentially, like what my vision is, we're talking about the king archetype, is to have men's circles, have women's circles, whoever wants to join them, essentially, within a certain agreed upon set of parameters, would join them, and then they would also come together and have a circle. That's sort of my vision for, and we did one. You and I did one. You and I and our group of friends, our community, did one with all genders. But yeah, it's something that I want to see regularly happening in communities.
are you talking about the full moon ceremony we did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had some circle. Well, it was a circle, but it had some work happening there. So anyway, so you went to this weekend or this workshop, and it was 4 days. You told me, and there was a men's circle. I didn't know there was a women's. I didn't even know there were women there. And there was a women's circle, and you said that was an MKP, a Mankind Project men's circle, correct?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, if I recall correctly.
And was that where you did the archetypes? Oh no, that was in the one that you attended for 2-3 months that did the archetypes.
Yeah, that was a separate entity.
Right.
I'm trying to think of which one I went to first, actually, but I'm not sure. Like I feel like the men's circle at the Primitive Skills Gathering might have been the first one that I went to.
So when you say Primitive Skills Gathering, it's fascinating to me that they had a men's circle there and a women's circle there, because often, to go into some sort of like archetypal teachings here for a moment, often when people think of skills, they think of I can build a box, or I can bake muffins, or like whatever. But those are all external focused, right? So I find it amazing and beautiful that they had mental, emotional, spiritual circle work included in a, we call it primitive or primal? Primitive skills gathering, because to me it's an essential skill. Mm-hmm. Hence why I've committed so much of my life to this thing called men's work. Is like I find those skills to be essential now. And as far as the archetypes go, like, yeah, sure, these skills, building a fence or preparing food, not to say that any gender should be doing those or shouldn't be doing those, either or all skills. But that external focus is often very warrior, like hands-on, get it done, go out and do something. I have the skills to go out and do something. I need to go, whether it's whatever gender it is, whether to go out and capture an animal or hunt an animal or build something to keep animals out of my vegetable patch or whatever. It's very hands-on, that warrior energy. So we kind of covered two of them there. What about the other two? We got king, we got warrior. What's your take on the magician and the lover side of things? How do you interpret those?
Well, I feel like I can talk about the lover a little more easily. Um, the lover archetype to me is that part of yourself that you can embody that really experiences joy. I look at playfulness as being a part of that. And then obviously uh, romantic love as well, and connecting with um, practices that make you a better lover, like a more attentive, communicative, um, more present lover in your relationships, all relationships, I guess, too. Like I would say that when
And
you're,
community is a big part of Lover.
yeah,
Connection and community.
I would say that what we're doing right now is part of the lover archetype, at least to some extent, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about, in my perspective, it's like nothing that gets done is without one of those, or sorry, without all of those.
mm,
So it's like, yeah, like, building a fence may be typically very warrior energy, yet if it's being done in a specific way, with a lot of heart, with a lot of connection between the people, maybe they did some sort of ceremony at the beginning to like connect, like we're all going to do this thing together. You could bring in that other energetic, that lover energetic alongside the warrior and have them equally doing that task. So to me, there's no like, oh, this is just warrior, this is just lover. It's like, it's always this sort of, I guess, melting pot or like swirling energetic of like what's happening right in the moment.
mm,
But yeah, lover for me is just a lot about connection and community and emotions. Um, that's the very simple. I mean, in that book, we're talking about King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. This is there's like a whole chapter on it. There's the immature aspects of it. There's the shadow aspects of it. There's the fully realized or fully mature aspects of it. So it's quite a science. We're really simplifying it here, but for what we're doing, it's appropriate.
yeah.
But it is quite in depth, and it's complex how they all interact.
Well, that's something too that we could explore in the future, is even just like an entire episode on each archetype.
Yeah, totally. It would be good for me, and it sounds like it'd be good for you to like really be sharp on those things, because they can play such a big role in the work and they have in my life. And it would be good to have something where someone can just go listen to it and feel like they understand at the end of it, like in simplest terms. Yeah, providing the information and the possibilities of deepening into it on one's own once they got the foundation.
Yeah, and then so the magician archetype, I guess I kind of look at that as the spiritual aspect of things. I mean, being someone who like actually practices magic to some extent, I think that like I embody that archetype at least a little. But for some reason, when I think of like describing the magician archetype, I don't know exactly what to say about it. So how would you describe that archetype? And
yeah, the magician is like, well, I whenever I'm explaining this to people, I always break them down like, lover is like the emotional stuff, connection stuff. Warrior is like the physical body and the physical world and our actions. Magician is like the mind, the conscious mind, the subconscious, the collective conscious, the collective unconscious. It's technology. It's like the alchemist. It's the one who goes in and works with the inner world, the lower world.
So like working with your core beliefs and that sort of stuff would be magician work.
Yeah, totally. And transforming them, right? Like it's magician, shaman, alchemist, like all those things, right? The scientists are very magician-y. Intellectual people are very magician archetype centric. Like I guess I won't use myself because I feel fairly balanced in all of them now, or them regularly. But some people typically start this type of work associated with one of them primarily, almost like the love languages. It's like my primary love language is blah blah blah. My primary archetypal identity is, this or that. And again, anybody who's like specializes in archetypes would be able to just ask them a question and they would probably change their answer, because it's just where the mind goes. It's not necessarily accurate. I used to believe I was very like warrior energy, and I still believe that, but why I went to men's work was the lover and the magician. It was like the connection, the community, the emotional regulation, the emotional intelligence that I didn't have at the time, and what to do about my thoughts, like these plaguing thoughts and these plaguing like beliefs about myself, that I was a failure and it was always going to be this way, and that no one was ever going to want me, and that like and like fuck the world, and like all these beliefs, right? So it was like, really, I was way more in lover and magician, but I had an ego identity that I was way more warrior. But it wasn't really true, because I was not working at my business at the time, like full time. I was not getting stuff done. I was, but I just believed that I was, mainly in that archetype. So yeah, I mean, it's people always want to associate with one of them, but it always is sort of a dance between these energies, these ways of being, if you will. But yeah, the magician, like you say, is very much about the mind and intellect and processing and transforming, and in this, he's often like the advisor to the king too. Like the king might have a vision, like I want this to happen in my life or in my realm, as we say it in the archetypal language, and the magician, the part of us that contemplates, the part of us that's intelligent, will actually say, okay, I see your vision, king side of this human, or I see your vision, Ryan, or I see my own vision. It's like, okay, now how can I create that? How can I manifest that? How can I use the right actions to build that? How can I use my lover to build it with heart? So it starts to get into this sort of like dance of ratios of energies. But I mean, does that make sense around the magician archetype?
Yeah. Totally. Makes sense.
It's all about the mind and the intellect, the clarity of like how the vision will happen. But they don't, it's not so warrior as like, this is how the vision's going to get done. Then you can hear, like, when I say it, my voice changes, right? Kind of like a little exploratory voice about the magician. And then when I have more warrior energy, like, this is how it's going to get done. This is the action happening. This is the completion. And then the lover is very like, this is why we're doing it. This is who we're doing it for. This is like the energy we want to put into it. So, I mean, you mentioned that piece about spirituality, and in this, I mean, I'm thinking in my mind about men's work being like a pie chart right now, and like archetypes is one slice of the pie chart for me now. And in this slice of the pie chart, I think the lover is actually, it depends who you ask too, but what I've been reading, and I was actually designing a workshop recently last year about masculine, feminine energy and lover archetype and tantric yogic practices, and still in the works. But I was reading up about the lover because we were going to focus. It was like Awakening the Evolved Lover or something we were calling it. And I was reading up the book, the lover, specifically in King Warrior Magician Lover, and it said in there, if I remember correctly, that lover is actually the most connected to spirit and spirituality and creation, because it is about creation. It's about like the. I mean, I'm gonna go a little bit like, I don't like the term. Is there a better term than woo woo? Like esoteric, I guess, is what the one that I like. Esoteric, or there's one that starts on an M too. Metaphysical, esoterical, metaphysical, whatever.
Esoteric is a good word. Way better than
Esoteric. Yeah, I want to smack woo. Like, I mean, we shouldn't talk violence, but like, I want, like, it's one phrase that I wish would just go away. Whenever I hear it, I kind of like, oh,
yeah.
I wish I'd put that in the carburetor. Yeah, and just turn it on for like a good 10 minutes and just chop it, so it's no longer able to be done. Anyways, so they were saying that lover is actually the most connected to it, but then I always obviously think magician, magic, spirituality. So it is also connected there, because when we think of how the mind works, it's like, if I'm fully present, I'm present to this motorcycle that seemingly keeps driving up and down the road, and I'm present to this fan that's blowing on me, right? So if I'm fully present, like that level of mind, like awareness of my surroundings, but then it's like, okay, that's surroundings. What am I aware of in my thoughts? Okay, my thoughts are going super rapid, or my thoughts are just moving kind of gently, like gentle waves lapping up at the shore in the morning. It's like a very peaceful, calm thought process happening, or I'm clear of thoughts in the moment because the mind is so well trained that it's waiting for me to tell it to do something. You just, and then you go down into like core beliefs, and like beliefs about self, beliefs about the world, beliefs about money, beliefs about relationships, and that's usually a little bit lower, like in the subconscious. So like a core belief that I had in the past about money is like, I'm never going to make enough. I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to have money. And I didn't even know about that belief until I started doing work. Anyway, I'm just using that as an example to show, the layers of the mind. Below that is like, okay, so where did all these things come from? Sure, they came from my environment. But then we get to the level of archetypes. It's like, yeah, but are all those beliefs actually inherent in us? Every belief, and our environment and our genetics just activates it. One set of circumstances leads me to believe that I will never have enough money. But does the rich kid have that belief too? It just never gets activated like genetic expression. So it starts going deeper and deeper and deeper to where we start to say, oh, okay, so who am I? And then we get below the ego into the self, and then so that can be a route into spirituality also, right? So when you say magician is the one that you would think is the most spiritual, it's not wrong at all. I think what I'm trying to say here is that they actually all are.
Yeah.
And in the book they say lover, but I haven't read the book recently enough to know what they say about that in all the other ones. But in my research for this course, it was like the lover is the most connected with spirituality, if I remember, how they worded that. It's the center of the spiritual aspect of us. That I was surprised.
That kind of makes sense to me. Like the lover would be the most like connected to source, the most basic form of spirituality in that sense, whereas like the magician would be getting into practices and rituals, right?
And transforming what is to be more in alignment with what it really is. And then the king is the vision, right? It's like, and if the king gets far enough out of the way, he's a very high level king where he's actually hollow, and spirit is giving him the vision and the mission. And the warrior, same thing. If he's actually so present with his work that he's not living in thought, he's not living in emotion, he's not living in this drama or that drama or the past or the future, the warrior or anybody, then that's the presence is like one of the greatest practices of spirituality also. So you mix that presence while the warrior is doing a task, chop wood, carry water, and the sort of ability of the magician to, when a thought does come up, to let it go using the letting go process, or transmute it, or go into the deeper beliefs, or like all these different other categories. That's when they all start really working together. And there's, we think of this pie chart like a pizza. It's like the pizza's never been cut, and the pizza is the box also, and the pizza is the person who delivered it also, and the pizza is the pizza factory or the pizza shop, and then it's also this town that it's in, and the planet, and it gets, we can divide them up to talk about it, and this is super theoretical shit talking right now, but it pertains to what we do in men's work. It's like we look at all these categories: our mind, all the levels of it, our emotions, our being, all the levels of it, our connection with spirituality, all the levels of it, our vision, our mission, our purpose, all the levels of it, our actions, words included, what we do in the world when we get out of our own egocentric self and into realizing the deep connection. And if people have actually experienced it, we can talk about oneness, and if they've integrated that experience into their way of being. It's really like we're working with all of that in men's work, but we usually start with, how can I have a better life? And then we could start looking at all these different arenas. Well, is your mind fucking you up, or are you like way too emotional, or are you like not taking the right action, or any action at all, or you have no vision? I mean, I just described myself a few years ago right there. My emotions were all fucked up. I wasn't doing the right actions, and sometimes no actions at all. My mind was focusing on the past and the future and the fear and the pain. I didn't know what the hell the point of life was. Like what we're even doing here. Why do we even bother with all this shit? Yet I have this drive to like have these things and have these experiences and like connect, but I don't understand why. Right? So all of these things we're talking about archetypes, really, as much as it's theoretical shit talking, it's also, once it comes to a level of integrated understanding, it's highly, highly beneficial at a certain point. And then after a while, it's not that crucial anymore. But for a certain period of time, it's highly beneficial to become aware of our totality, or that portion of our totality, I should say, and where we're at with all those things, where we're at with our actions, thoughts, deeper mind, emotions, connection, community, vision, mission, purpose. It's a really easy map to use once someone understands it. And take that map away, and you can still work with all the same stuff. It's just kind of like imagery on one level to be like, oh, okay, so let's check on that thing that we all agree upon that we talked about in this way. But you don't need that. You can just be like, hey, you could just say, what actions are you taking? Are you happy with your actions right now? Are you doing the right thing? Where are your emotions at? You don't need all that fancy language, but for nerds like me and you, I'm a closet nerd.
Well, I think that the archetypes like what's good about them is that, for one, it gives you these 4 distinct categories that kind of remind you of certain aspects of your life that you need to keep in check and keep in balance. And also each of them has its higher expressions and its lower expressions.
Yeah, that's a good way to put
it. And so those, like, I feel like the archetypes themselves like have a life of their own, if that makes any sense,
Well, I mean, to someone it might not, but to me it does.
Yeah, like they feel like a real entity within you. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, when you start asking bigger and bigger and further out questions that don't necessarily pertain to the ego itself, you start to get a lot of interesting experiences of what all these things really mean, and how amazing that it really is to be a human and all the different aspects of it.
Yeah. So that was a good primer on the archetypes there. I wanna continue talking about my experience at that Mankind Project circle, just because the story I was telling you yesterday, I think, is really good to share.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, right. Yeah. Go.
so again, this might have been my first experience with a men's circle, and we uh, one of the initial processes in the circle was to go around and clear any existing charges. And do you want to give a quick description of what a charge is, Ryan?
Yeah. So in the Mankind Project, that process is called a clearing, but it's clearing charge. And a charge is essentially if I have any uh, thoughts, emotions, judgments, perceptions, energy, emotions towards another man that may be affecting me to the level where it is preventing me from being fully present in what we're doing. So, what that might look like is that if you said you were going to pick me up at 4 p.m. and you didn't pick me up at 4 p.m. and because of that I lost $500, I might have a charge with you. And like conversely, if I think that you're a really good guitar player and every time you play, I just get so excited and I really want to, I really wish I was you because you can do this thing. And oh my God, you get all these women, like 10 women sitting on your lap at once and like getting all the grapes. Like I might have a charge with you. Like I want to be you, or like I'm jealous of your life or whatever it is. Right. So it can be on the positive or the negative side. But yeah, you think that makes sense to someone who's never seen that before?
I think so. And
Okay.
so I've got my example here as well, of course.
Yeah.
Which is like, so there was just this guy, and for whatever reason, I just
Did you think
had
he was a fucking guy at the time? Like this fucking guy. Like, was it like that? This fucking guy.
maybe I don't know. It's just when the facilitator was explaining, like, okay, we're gonna go around. If you've got a charge with anybody, you can clear it. This is what a charge is. And I wish I could remember exactly how he explained it, because he explained it in such a way that I just realized that this strange feeling that I had towards this dude who was in the circle, I don't know what it was. Like, some part of me wanted to tell him to fuck off. Some part of me wanted to fight him. I don't know, like what, for no reason at all. Like there was absolutely no interaction that I had with this guy beforehand. But anyway, so I brought it up and I went through the clearing process with that, and had to like sit there and tell this guy, like, hey, I've got some issue with you. I have no idea why or what it is, but it's there. And then to which is such a seemingly insignificant thing, like I could have easily just like buried that and not dealt with it for that entire weekend. But to have that opportunity to bring that up and clear that space definitely allowed me to be more present in that circle, and probably
So
more.
on the level of like energy and body sensations, what was the difference?
Well, I was definitely, I mean, again, this is 6 or 7 years ago, but I was much more relaxed. Like there was a sense of relief,
Oh,
because there was something that was bothering me, and I could have ignored it, but it would still be there,
that's like a mosquito. Like yours may have been like mosquito or like wasp sized or whatever,
Yeah.
bat flying around in the room. or it could be a fire-breathing fucking dragon. Like that's the range of charge, right? So it's cool that you got to experience it on what sounds like a more subtle level. Like I don't really know. It's just this energetic, like I'm not fully centered and present right now. I'm like off put by this guy.
Yeah.
Like that's maybe the best way. Is like, am I centered when I look at each person? It's like, yeah, or no. As soon as I look at you, it's like I'm off put. There's a charge.
Yeah. So that for me was a really profound experience, and it has stuck with me for a long time. And I think that's a really great, important practice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful process for many reasons in my experience of it. What it does is it allows us to be fully authentic, and it allows us to be, he might have gotten something from that too.
Yeah.
He might have been like, oh yeah, I am always scowling, or I am always like, like burping and farting or whatever when someone's doing a guided meditation. I don't know what the hell it was, but and he might have been like, oh, weird, I didn't know that impacted someone else like that. So for you to take the first step and be like, I don't know what it is, let's explore it, and him to be like, oh, let's explore it. And for everybody out there listening, it's a specific set of questions. It's not like, oh, hey, when you do this thing, I think fuck you, so fuck you. It's like, no, you go in and someone's facilitating the two men, the man with the charge and the man that has the charge. The man with the charge has the charge with. So there's a facilitator there that has a set of questions that's been designed to get the man with the charge deeper into himself, understand what is happening for him beyond the external perception, whether he's conscious of what the external reason is or not. So it's all about shadows and projections and inner child wounds and all the stuff that we find out that then when we become more aware of them, and we might have to do some deeper work. Sometimes people get emotional. Sometimes people need to do some screaming or some crying to really realize that they've suppressed this thing their whole life and that it just comes out in these weird little ways onto people. You've experienced me have a charge with you, and it was completely like unreal. Well, not completely. It was for what happened to what the reaction was in my judgment out of proportion, right? So that's where it's super clear when it's a fire-breathing dragon like that. But it's those little ones that are important too, right? Because you get to release something from your energetic body, from your emotional body, from your psyche, from your physical body that you might have been carrying for a long time. And so that man that you had a charge with, he might take something away from it. You felt lighter, more relaxed, right? But this process is beautiful also because then if there's something happening, like if someone's in some sort of other process, and I won't give away all the secrets of men's work right now, we do some processing. But if someone's in some other process and you're looking over at this other guy, like, fuck, I hate you. Like, I wish you weren't here. I actually kind of want to kick you right in the throat. Then you're not going to be fully present for the man who might be doing a trust fall, or who might be like conquering his fear of heights by climbing something, and we're all holding a giant fucking tarp or sheet or whatever below to catch him if he falls, so he knows that we've got his back. Well, if I turn around to look at you because I'm so charged with you, and he falls right on the spot that I'm supposed to be holding and he falls through, it's not that good, right? So it really gets us on board with everybody there, and that's called building a container. It's like, and we talked about this in the last call, building a safe space to practice, to push our limits, to push through things so that we can show up, in our world differently. Our internal world is transformed, as a process, not as it's not transformed and now it is, but the world can be transforming, but we need a safe space to do that. And that clearing process you're talking about is a very, very important part of that, as with the extreme examples I just gave of some man falling because I was focusing on kicking you, falling into where I was supposed to catch him. Or I could give him good advice, but my head is thinking about good advice if he asks for it. But my head is thinking about, how much I don't like what you did earlier or whatever, right? So that's a very important process in any of this work is to have a clear, clean container, which means all the men in that space have a clean relationship in that moment. Something else might need to happen later, but in that moment we can move forward because we've got somewhere where it's like, okay, I can put that down now for now. Let's move forward. We'll deal with the rest of that later. So it's very important for building that safe space, but by that I mean a space where it's like, okay, we've come to a level where we trust each other enough to move forward. There's never going to be full trust because people have trust issues and all other things, but we get to a place where everybody can raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm good. I'm ready to move forward. I'm super stoked that you experienced that. And when you were telling me about it yesterday, I was like, wow, that's amazing that happens outside of my community. You know, the only thing I'm familiar with is my little community of MKP and DC, but I forget that it's worldwide. Other people experience that shit. It's beautiful.
It was beautiful.
So what else did you experience in that group? Anything else that sticks out?
No, I don't remember anything else from that night.
You were just so relaxed after you cleared your charge.
Yeah, that was it.
Blissed out.
Yeah, no, I
some
don't.
Lavender on your third eye and go home.
It was again. It was a long time ago, so I've kind of forgotten everything else. And it's interesting that that's the one point that really stood out to me. But that was the one.
Well, it's one of the most pertinent to human relationships.
Yeah.
Like, how often have you walked around with a charge and not cleared it?
Yeah.
I mean, I can speak for myself and say, like, some large percentage of my life I've had a charge with something or someone every day. I mean, now thankfully I've gotten to a level where I can clear those things on my own pretty rapidly by seeing the truth, a level of truth of it. But for a while there, it was like, man, I was always charged. And it's draining physically.
Yeah.
Mentally, emotionally, also, but physically.
For sure.
Yeah, so I'll share some of my experiences now. We got 20 minutes. How long have we been going for?
We've been going for about an hour now, I think. I don't have,
okay.
I don't see the exact time, but yeah, keep on going. Tell us what else we might have experienced in that circle. If I could remember what happened.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know, did we talk about this last episode with sort of like our experience with men's work? Did I already say like how long I've been doing it, blah, blah, blah?
Maybe, but whatever.
Okay, well, whatever. So I got into men's work about 2021 right now, 5 years ago. Yeah, it was about September 2016. And I had actually Googled, how do you get your ex back? Because at the time I thought that was what I wanted. And, you know, I got into all these articles and YouTube videos and whatever, and they're talking about what it means to be a man and how to keep your partner attracted to you, essentially, so that they're not leaving you / walking away. They're all constantly coming towards you. And so I got into this sort of dating and relationship coaching stuff on YouTube and articles. And then it started leading to these books about masculine, feminine energy. And then I was just like mind blown. I had no idea that any of this even existed. So I went to my friend, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. Andrew Dow, Elements Movement Studio in Powell River, British Columbia, Canada. We'll plug there for you. And yeah, so I went to him, I said, let's start a men's group. And I didn't know that there were such things as men's group, but I just wanted people to be learning this stuff that I was learning. So fast forward, we joined this men's group that he already knew about rather than starting one. They told me about this organization, the Mankind Project. And April 2017, I went and did one of their training weekends called the New Warrior Training Adventure. Look it up. You'll find out all the stuff that says it's a cult, and you'll find out all the stuff that says it changed my life for the better, and I'm a whole new man, and my whole family finally sees me again and loves me again. So you'll find both. You'll find the shit that says that it's a cult. You'll find the beautiful stuff too.
To be clear, it's not a cult.
No, it's not a cult. I mean, in my definition, in my experience, I've spent thousands of hours there, and I don't see how anybody thinks that. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, no, for me, it's a community, and I spent a lot of time there, and yeah, so essentially for me, men's work, what happens is there's men's groups, which is typically like weeknights, 2-3 hours. There are men's workshops, maybe they're online, maybe it's a weekly thing, 2 hours an evening, maybe it's a full day. Maybe it's a full weekend, a weekend intensive. The New Warrior Training Adventure is a 48-hour intensive. And it's intended to be a deep dive into the next level, or the first step of someone's understanding and expansion of themselves on many levels. I won't say all levels, but many levels. So yeah, I mean, I've had some of the most beautiful experiences doing my own work, men's work, in these groups, in these weekends. We do a lot of vulnerable sharing. We do a lot of which takes some courage sometimes, like I was programmed to not share my emotions, and then I would stuff them all, whether it was joy or sadness, like deep joy for fear that people would squash it, or sadness, fear that people would attack it, among other things. And so yeah, there's like a lot of vulnerable sharing. There's listening skills. We practice listening skills so that we can better hear our people that we want to listen to, hear ourselves. There's self-inquiry. There's that magician transformation stuff that we talked about. There's experiences that we have that provide us the opportunity to choose to go very deep, or due to the circumstances of our lives, force us to go very deep. And ideally, there's a good container and a good group of facilitators there that can help us to have those breakthroughs, if you will call them that. That's what I like to call them, breakthroughs into the next level of experience, the next way of being, the next level of consciousness. There's lots of ways to say it. Emotional intelligence work is a big one. Knowing what emotions are, knowing what the emotions are, knowing how an emotion feels in our body and where it feels in our body, the somatics and the sensations, the energy body, how they all connect, and how our thoughts connect with those things. I mean, I'm giving a very wide swathing overview of all the things, but there's accountability there. It's like, hey, this is what I'm going to do this week to really serve this situation in my life or my life.
Why don't you give us maybe a more specific example of something that you've done in session in a men's group that was really transformative for you? Maybe one experience that you can think of, and
holy shit,
where you were before and where you got to after. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, let me finish where I was going with the other thing, because I'm almost there.
Sure.
So after the accountability thing, and accountability for some people is super important, because they, like me, because if they don't have someone to answer to, and I don't like answering people, so it's kind of funny, but they don't have someone to answer to. If someone's not going to be there on the other side, then they can get slippery. I can get slippery and be like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, manana, whatever. And then there's lots of it in all of these archetypes, or all these aspects of being a human. And the last one would be really deepening into our mission and purpose, whether that's ego mission, soul mission, spiritual mission, all of it, getting them aligned on all levels is the ideal practice. So mission and purpose is a big part of that. And then that guiding our actions and our relationships also. Now, the piece that you've asked for that I'm, for some reason, struggling to think of one that I can share, but there's lots.
Well, what's the first one that comes to mind? It doesn't have to be like a huge,
Oh yeah, okay.
profound
So
thing.
I had a girlfriend tell me about rape before, when she was raped, and the immediate thing that came to my mind, especially because she told me the names of the people who did that, the immediate thing that came to my mind was to hunt them down and do bad things to them. So that's not a very healthy energy to live in for very long. Thankfully, I grew up in a way that those things didn't come to fruition when those would come to my mind, yet they often would come when I would hear about bad things. I'm going to do something, some redemptive act, make them see what they did, you know, that type of revenge. What's the other word? I really want to use the other word. What is it? It's like the vigilante, that vigilante shit. So I knew that, thankfully, and through talking with my friends who are in men's work and coaches and counselors and whatever, I knew from talking that I had to let go of that, because there's really, and that's not going to help her. She doesn't want that. She doesn't want me to go kill someone or beat the shit out of someone. Like, she does. It's the last thing she wants. It's going to cause all sorts of negativity for her, right? So it's all, that was all about me and me trying to process my feelings, the anger, and like I'll just leave it at anger, and the grief, the fucking grief of that, anger and grief. The anger is trying to do something, but so that the grief can go away rapidly. The grief that shit happens in our world, and I've never crossed that line. But like I have not been the nicest person either, right? So the shame of when I've been a perpetrator, not in that way, but you know, like using my word in the wrong way, right? So anyway, I had this extreme charge with these people, and so what I couldn't figure out how to stop thinking about harming them. So I brought it to my men's group, which at the time was just a bunch of my friends who are in the Mankind Project community here or there in Canada. And they set up a scenario to get me into the deepest part of that anger that was available. So they would actually say, okay, so like, you know, what might they have been thinking while they were doing that, or while he was doing that? And then you know, of course, I created this scenario in my mind when she was telling me. And so these things would come out of like what their thoughts would be, or what energy they were in while they're doing that, right? And so these people, my friends, actually set up, so they started saying those things, and hearing them out loud, you know, even though I created them, she didn't actually say that they were saying any of these things, but there was the messages that I took on, the beliefs that I took on, or that were activated within me about what happens in those types of experiences. They started saying them to me, essentially to trigger me. Yeah, so they got me into this thing, and it's cool because we've already built a container. Everybody knows everybody, like in that specific group anyway. Everybody knows these processes that we know, and so they actually set up a thing where I had to like burn off that energy in a safe way. So it could have looked very violent to some people, you know, like I got restrained and I had to break out of it, but it's designed a certain way. I had to like break out of that, and to break out of that energy, and then to like mentally do the harm that I was wanting to do to the person. But that was just to kill. I'm just using the word kill, but that was to like burn off is a better way to say it. It's less violent. To burn off that energy, those stories that were playing in my mind, those visuals, and overcome them in my psyche. And so I do that by breaking free, and then breaking through this restraint setup that they had built for me. And then like, you know, there was no physical harm ever comes to it. Well, I shouldn't say ever, but not intentionally. You know, we do it in a very safe way. Sometimes an elbow flies here and there. But, you know, we got to the place where I had what's the beliefs about you, Ryan? What's the beliefs about humanity? And what are those beliefs saying to you right now? It's like, men are disgusting and evil, and like, those beliefs are not new. So, but this is just an extreme triggering of them. So breaking through all of those things physically broke through the beliefs also to the other side of it. And then when you're literally physically fucking exhausted and burnt out mentally and emotionally from like fighting these beliefs, you kind of get to the other side for the win. And often it's this like relief. And so I was able to do some work around that and get to the place that I was, the beliefs about myself and when I had perpetrated on people, when I had used my word or my actions, in a way that I still had hidden or suppressed shame around, I was able to break through the beliefs about myself that I'm a piece of shit, that I'm an asshole, that I'm a terrible man. So and really it's like, yeah, sure, they did that thing or he did that thing, but I was also projecting my unresolved persecution of myself onto that scenario. And I really got to go to the other side of that, and then they ask you questions like, so what else is true about you? Like, yeah, you have those parts of you that believe that, but what else is true? And what else is true is like, I care like deeply and I love deeply and I will fight for my people. And I, as often as possible, ask for forgiveness when I've done wrong, and I can actually come to someone and apologize with my whole heart. So they get you to start saying that stuff on the other end. Once that energy is gone, like you fought through enough. And if you fight through and it's still there, you fight through again until you got no more fight in you. You've literally like physically burnt off that energy. And then you reinstall something new into the psyche of your choosing. And this is why it's not a cult, is because I choose what I want to put in there. Not someone else saying, oh, you're a beautiful man, you're so fucking gentle and whatever, right? No, it's like, so what else is true about you? Someone might ask. It's like, I'm really caring. And I'm in like an altered state because I just went through an intense experience. I'm super caring and I'm super loving. And I care about people's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health deeply because I care about my own. And I forgive myself for when I was a piece of shit or whatever thing I was saying at the beginning. And so that led me to, do some of my own personal work about like letting go of like shame I had for being those things, right? And like you said, it's from like relaxing and relieving over on this side to like monumentally energetically different afterwards, to where those thoughts don't come back anymore, or those emotions don't come back anymore, those projections onto someone else. I mean, I was told of other rapes after that. But it was I was told of a bunch of them, but it was a different experience each time. And I had to do a lot of work around that. Like, each time I was told I had to do, like, I did some serious grief work around the state of the world. And it was connected with grief from when I was a kid of like, losing people, like, from death or from divorce or whatever. So it was like this whole losing, and it connected with loss of innocence, like loss of their own sovereignty over their body. That's that's where the magician comes in, is it connects to a lot of things. And so when those projections don't come up anymore, when those deep, intense emotions don't come up anymore, when those like these crazy energies that take over, and for some people they actually go do that bad thing. They go kill someone. Like, people kill people because of that, And so to be free of those things then gave me, safety and peace in one way, but then the deep desire to help others to, maybe someone's on the path to becoming one of those people, a rapist or a killer or whatever, and to be able to do this type of work to where, maybe we can shift that before something bad happens and really get them into their heart and into their wounds and open themselves and into community. It's not just about, that sticky shit, but it's about the beautiful parts that are also there, and the beautiful parts getting some time in between all these thoughts and emotions. But it really created for me a strength, like an ability to sit, and after, like, since these 4 years, like I can sit with anybody and anything. Like I could sit with someone who's got a gun up to their head and be calm. You know, like I can sit in some pretty intense shit now because I've done enough work to be able to like sit and let those things come in and let them come out and be fully present with someone, yet not absorb it all myself and not make it mean anything about me or that I have to do something about the situation because of my reaction to it. You know, I can be there with that person. I can support them. I can help them. And I'm free from that energetic burden. You know, and there's still work to do, of course, but it's very freeing. It's very liberating. It's very, I'm trying to say lightning, but not enlightening. It's like illuminating. It's like energy, the opposite of draining, whatever that would be. Like, it's not energizing. It's energizing, but it's also just yeah, I'll just say it's like freedom. It's like peace from these burdening thoughts and emotions and like body sensations. So that's why I was trying to find one that I could use because that one kept coming to my mind. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about that. It's too vulnerable. It's too real. Those aren't my stories. Like, I don't want to talk about that, but that was my experience. And you asked me for the first one. That was the first one, and it kept coming back. So there it is.
Yeah. Well, that's super powerful. So it's a great example.
This work's fucking intense. It's so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
It's the best thing I ever did. And that's some of my best friends I met there. And we have these commonalities as you and I do, you know, it's like we have this intrigue with what's happening and what we're made of and why we do what we do. And it's like, really, that's like my life now, not just men's work, but that whole world of exploration and adventuring into myself and adventuring into the physical world and where my blockages are and connecting more deeply with people.
Cool. Well, that
So everybody get out there and do men's work.
Definitely. If you have access to a men's circle around you, whether it's a Mankind Project or any other independent men's groups, and I'm sure there's other organizations than MKP that are.
Yeah, it might be a good time to plug some of those. Mankind Project, Sterling Institute of Relationships, Sacred Sons. I don't know what they fully call themselves, but Sacred Sons Group. I don't know. Brotherhood. There's Samurai Brotherhood. There's a couple other ones that I don't remember. I've only heard their names once or twice, and I'm sure there's lots. But if anybody's interested, just shoot us an email at info@illuminatingman.com, and either I will send you some links or send you some contacts. I know a lot of people in MKP around the world, so if you wanted to just talk with someone in your area about what that might look like, that's available too. So feel free to reach out. I'm always willing to talk to help someone on their way if it comes up. I don't know if it won't speak for you, Rye, but you know, you feel free to shoot us an email and
Absolutely,
and connect around anything you might want or need around support for your work or getting into men's work or supporting someone else, or around the podcast, of course.
Yeah.
Man, I felt so official when I just said that shit. Like I knew what I was talking about.
I think you do know what you're talking about.
No, I meant like if I had a script in front of me.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was from watching 8 Mile and the freestyle battles.
Thanks to everybody for listening. If you're interested in supporting the mission, you can donate to us through PayPal, or I think that we're getting our Patreon.
Yeah, we're hooked up on Patreon now.
Okay, so we are on Patreon. So
yeah, Patreon's on our Facebook page, not on Instagram yet. And if you want it, you can also send an email over. And
by the time this episode comes out, that link should be available everywhere.
Yeah.
So
it's available now. Cool. Yeah. So I would appreciate if anybody feels called to donate to us. We're just doing this for now, and we're trying to make it into something that serves the planet. So we don't have to go work at Subway anymore, right?
And hopefully we can also upgrade Ryan's sound so we don't hear those motorcycles anymore.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, on Patreon they have this thing where you can. Once we get, and it's like a little goal. Once we get this many followers or this much, this many Patreons or patrons or whatever they're called. I just did it today. Then we're going to get a new microphone. So it's kind of like this, like, then the followers would be like, okay, we just need like, 2 more followers or whatever, or like a little bit more percent towards the goal, and then we don't have to listen to his fucking knock off Apple headphones and motorcycles anymore. So maybe that's incentive enough for people to hook up with Patreon or take up. Yeah. I don't know, man. Central America.
Yeah. What can you do? It's the content. The content is what's important. But
yeah,
we do want to make the sound good for everyone who's listening as well. So that's definitely a priority. Don't expect it to look and sound like this for forever.
No, we know that we suck right now.
Yeah.
We're doing it anyway. Okay, cool.
That's a core belief that we could dig into, maybe.
Well, it's okay if we see the belief and then we're just going to keep going anyway with courage and bravery. True. And you know what? People are going to think we suck, but we're going to do it anyway. And then it's all good. Anyway, cool, man. It was nice to sit with you again, and I will talk to you very soon. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you all. Good night.